Welcome back, everyone, to the Dice Pirates podcast. This is episode 14, where we are going to be bringing you another group of fantastic solo games. That's, of course, a type of gaming that has really been getting its moment this past year. You might not be able to play with other people, you might be stuck at home, but this is still part of the hobby that you can really enjoy. I, of course, am your captain, Ian, joined by the ever-present Matt and our oft-joining companion, Aaron. How you guys doing?
Good. Have I been relegated to the title just ever present? Like I have no role, I have no responsibilities.
I am giving you the title that you have worked for. This is what you have earned, so I feel like
Oh,
this is valid.
that's fair. And also, I don't have to do anything. So cool. I'm just gonna climb up to the crow's nest. You guys have fun.
How are you doing, Aaron? I'm glad to have somebody else that I can talk to.
Good, good. Happy to be back in the saddle. Or am I mixing my metaphors there?
Maybe. Hey, I found a special guest for us up here in the crow's nest. Hey, it's Lilly from Play It Solo is here to hang out with us on today's voyage. Lilly, how you doing? It's so good to have you here.
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
We are doing great. It's so great to have you here. Of course, you are one of our favorite Instagrammers. You do a Instagram that is solely talking about solo games. You do cover a lot of those, and I've personally really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot getting to read through that and getting to pick up a lot of games that I wouldn't otherwise find. So that's been fantastic. I'm really glad that you decided to come on the podcast.
Well, thanks to you guys. I'm really excited. A little nervous, but I'm excited. Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing to be nervous about. We're a friendly crew of pirates who roam the sea. There's nothing dangerous about that.
I guarantee you are already more professional than everybody here. Moving forward to our soapbox, we're actually going to go ahead and give Lilly the chance to talk first. Is there anything you want to go ahead and talk about on the soapbox?
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I decided to buy Anachrony because a lot of people were praising this game for its solo version variant so I went and buy it, and it was the second edition. And when it came, I just had a weird feeling. There was like a two-player little icon on the side of the box, and I was like, that's kind of weird. So I just went online and did a little research, and apparently the second edition doesn't have the solo version anymore. You have to buy Fractures of Time to play solo. I got a little frustrated. I'm still a little mad about it, to be honest, because, well, if you can do an extension with a solo variant, why don't you put it in the base game in the first place? It's kind of weird to me. And then I did a little research for this podcast, and there's actually a lot of games that you have to buy an expansion or another box in order to play solo, and it's a little weird, and I don't know why. And maybe yes, it's because there's more and more solo players, and it's a way for publisher to make more money and stuff. But it's just it's a little frustrating for sure.
Yeah, when I heard that you were going to want to talk about this, I was really surprised because I hadn't heard a lot about it, and I started doing the same thing, kind of googling around, and realized that increasingly there's an upcharge for solo player expansions for games, and it really surprised me, and it kind of made me think back to when you would buy a video game and then there would be an ongoing charge or an upcharge for the multiplayer components. It's kind of like the board game version of that idea. But I think it does point to the growing popularity of solo gaming, which is really has been around for a while, but I think it had its moment in 2020 when so many people kind of needed that escape of being able to play board games, maybe in an environment where they couldn't interact with other folks. And so solo gaming has really emerged as this exciting new space. And unfortunately, when something gets hot, it also looks like a way to make money. So I think I think some publishers maybe see this as just a way to, increase their profits. But to be fair, also maybe there's added cost in some instances creating these solo things. Aaron, what's your take on this? I know you're like our other kind of solo aficionado on the Dice Scratch crew. Is this something you've ran into? What are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it's interesting because she brought up that's something she wanted to talk about. my initial thought was like, huh, that's weird. I feel like every game I've bought has had the solo mode included. And then I started to think about, we were trying to get together our notes, and I realized that one of the games that I really wanted to talk about, specifically how much I enjoy the solo mode, I had to buy that separately from the publisher directly. And I had to, it's just a little pack of cards that I had to get sent to me from the publisher in New Zealand. Like you can't get it on Amazon or Cool Stuff Inc. Like it was only available from the publisher directly. And I mean, I really enjoy the game, so I guess I can't, talk too mad smack about it. But yeah, that is, it did, in retrospect, that does feel kind of dirty.
Yeah, the whole thing just makes me appreciate Stonemaier Games all the more, and the care that they take to put their games together and to always include the Automata solo rules, which are not just an add-on, but have their own distinct rule book and system for play. That's just maybe that does add to their development costs, and maybe that's even passed on a bit to the consumer. Sometimes Stonemaier Games they're not the cheapest, up front to buy. But the fact that it's in there right out the base price does make it so much more convenient for the solo player, and that just makes you feel better about them as a publisher, and probably more loyal. The fact that they're not making you go through an extra step or jump through any hoops. So I think the publishers that take the time to really cater to the solo audience are gonna reap a lot of rewards as that group of players only grows from here.
Absolutely, and to touch on what you're saying there, Matt, with Stonemaier Games, they always take the time. The solo mode isn't just included in the back of the rule book as here's this kind of fiddly thing that you got to play two hands. It is its own separately designed and developed set of rules. It has its own rule book that is the same. I mean, sometimes it's almost the same thickness as the rules for the game itself. Like it's a very well thought out, well intentioned product that they include its own separate components, and that really says a lot to their commitment to that idea of being accessible to everybody at every play count. And I think that's something that should be praised and lauded.
I think it's really important that we do see that moving forward, especially as this has become more popular, and you really don't want to see a situation where it is just an added cost. I mean, going back to Anachrony very briefly, the original edition of Anachrony did have a solo play variant that you played with the base game. It wasn't something you needed to purchase extra. And then with their re-release, they decided to remove that and sell it with an expansion, which I don't see how you look at that any other way. And I really hope that we see more developers follow the Stonemaier Games version, because that is, of course, so much just more consumer friendly to everybody involved. But moving on, I know that Matt does have something he wants to talk about on the soapbox.
Absolutely. Let me climb up here. All right. So my beef, well, I don't know if this is a beef. My observation this week is around the latest Kickstarter hot item that is just racking up ridiculous totals. That's X-Men United from CMON, who will forever be in my heartbeat, cool mini or not. But this game has, as of recording, raised over $1.4 million in just over 24 hours since they launched the game. It's raising money so fast that I can just sit here and hit refresh on my phone and watch the Kickstarter add like 1,000 every second. It's bananas, and the whole thing just makes me go back to my comments a few episodes back about this crazy relationship that is happening right now between board gamers and Kickstarter, where there's all this FOMO and so much money is flowing in for these games. I remain convinced, I want to reiterate my prediction, that there will be some kind of major disaster where a game fails to launch and a lot of money is lost. Now, that's not going to be X-Men United. CMON is a great company. For better or worse, they know how to work the Kickstarter machine and get that money out of you. But they will deliver a game. It'll probably be pretty fun. It'll certainly be playable. And I don't think anybody has anything to worry about. But what worries me is smaller publishers, people with less experience, or in a worst case scenario, dubious intentions, who come chasing this Kickstarter money. I worry about the day that there's a really big scandal, and we all have to kind of rethink this. But it's just something that remains to me really fascinating to watch. The other quick thing I wanted to say about this game is it kind of like made me laugh because it made me think about our conversation from an episode ago about Fantasy Flight games. Because believe it or not, X-Men United is not the first X-Men board game to drop this year, although the game, I guess, technically is in fundraising. It hasn't dropped. But Fantasy Flight came out with X-Men Mutant Insurrection just a few months ago. And that game landed with a whimper. It did not show up on the hotness list that I recall. I haven't seen anybody on like Board Game Instagram really talking about it. It's gotten pretty lukewarm reviews. It's really funny seeing their different approaches to how they did these games. You know, with CMON, they're like, well, let's make some Marvel games. So let's make them like whiz, bang, loud games full of action and big minis. And Fantasy Flight Games was like, hey, let's make an X-Men game. Cool, what do you want to do? Let's start with Yahtzee. X-Men Mutant Insurrection is a dice game that when I first saw it, I was really excited about because it takes kind of the basic format of Elder Sign, which is a game that I really, really like. It actually plays very well solo, as on the topic of the episode. It's a spooky game in their Arkham universe, and it uses dice in a really tense way to try to like resolve encounters. When I heard they were basically doing an X-Men variation of that, I was actually pretty pumped. But after watching a couple of reviews, it's clear that they stripped out almost all the thematic elements of that and left us with a game that's basically just Yahtzee, you know, matching dice and moving your little cardboard X-Men standees around from card to card. It looks pretty lame, and to be fair, I haven't played it, but it does just kind of point to our comments from a few episodes ago where it just feels like Fantasy Flight's in an odd place as a company, and they're making some odd decisions. I'm a fan of theirs. I have so many of their games in my collection that I consider absolute favorites, so I'm rooting for them, but man, it's just funny to see how they tackled the same property with the X-Men and went in a wildly different and much more boring direction.
It really is incredible to see how a studio that is a little bit more connected and in touch with the board gaming community, what they're able to do with Kickstarter. Just to really give some context here, this game reached its funding goal in 10 minutes after they launched and
Good grief.
reached past $1 million in less than a day. They passed $1 million less than a day after they launched the project, which is absolutely, utterly ridiculous. That's a massive amount of money. And I mean, the game looks amazing, and it looks like it's going to be produced well, like everything else CMON does. But it still is incredible to me the amount of money that you can get when you are willing to, really actually work with the board game community. Aaron or Lily, have you guys played the original X-Men United at all? What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I played it like 2 or 3 times, and I'm not a fan of it. My friend Will is gonna kill me. Board Game Beacon is gonna kill me. But yeah, it's just. It's not for me, there's a game that, people will enjoy and that's fine. And I thought that I would too, but it's not my cup of tea. No, I'm going to have to resell it, I think.
I was looking at it just recently as a game to play with my kids. So I have young kids, and I was like, well, this looks not too difficult, like mechanically to like pick up, but it didn't look very deep. I think my dream X-Men game would actually be almost like a dungeon crawl, like kind of moving your little X-Men through a scenario and kind of resolving combat. And I think I would want something a little more deep like that, where you're kind of playing with the different X-Men's powers, or even just a Marvel game in general. So, yeah, I don't know. It's funny to see like how much this one is pulling in, though. I think it's entirely because of those cool chibi style miniatures.
Yeah, for sure. The minis are just like a big part of the success, for sure.
Yeah.
They do look amazing, but it's just, I'm not buying a game for the minis.
Isn't that basically what Kingdom Death Monster is? Just a game you buy for the minis?
If there's one thing CMON does well, it's definitely minis. The game may not be anything else, but it's going to have some great minis for sure. We're going to go ahead and move on to Bitter Board Gamers. I'm excited for this one. We're going to have more people than ever before, and I have some fun reviews for you guys that I think you guys will enjoy, of course. I'm going to go ahead and read off some 1-star reviews from some gamers who just didn't quite get the point of the game that they were playing. And you guys are going to go ahead and try and guess the game.
I'm excited.
You guys ready for your first review?
Yep.
All right. Really don't understand all the positive reviews. Boring. Luck-based with little mitigation and even less interaction. Designer wasn't even sure himself about rules. I'm talking about Tap Wheel Card. Sold to my mom, who somehow liked it, or at least pretended to.
Wow.
I was thinking Wingspan because I know that's a popular gotcha for this segment, but he did say himself, and Elizabeth's name's pretty big on that.
Yeah, okay, I have a problem already with like the ethics of this review because he was unhappy with the game. This individual wrote this review, was unhappy with the game, and sold it to their mother. Hey, mom, this game is this game is real bad. I don't like it. What's that all about, dude?
What game could that be?
Lily, you got any ideas on this?
No.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and read you a second review. This one is very short. Here's the review. Dice are dumb.
Dice are dumb.
I mean,
Is this a game we've played? That's my go-to every time. Is this a game we've played?
This is, in fact, a game that you have played. This is also a game that I know Lily has played.
Sagrada?
It is, in fact, Sagrada.
Whoa,
my God.
That's amazing.
how can you hate Sagrada that hard?
That's hard.
Sagrada is just lovely. It's just a lovely little game of like translucent dice that look like little lozenges.
It's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. How do you like Sagrada solo, Lily? Is it fun?
I like the challenge, the puzzle, but it's almost impossible to win. It's I don't think it's designed to solo players. It's impossible. It's insane. I think my most victory point was like 49, and it's impossible to win. So I just played, for myself, and I'm trying to beat my own score every time, and just because it's otherwise it's just so frustrating. I don't think it's a very good solo game.
That's a good point. Not every game scales down solo. Ian, you played it solo, right?
I did actually play it solo a couple times. My problem is that I'm a little dumb, and I made a couple mistakes and didn't follow the rules perfectly, and I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I'd almost finished my tableau, and I'd realized I made a couple illegal moves, and at that point, I was just, all right, well, I can't go back and change it now. Yeah. So normally when we play around the table, somebody is always like, oh, you can't do that. You got to take that move back, and people will jump on you.
You can't make a misplacement. If you play with the dice pirates, the rules police are coming out hard on you. Like you place a die in the wrong column, or like and it's just like no, so you don't have that problem. So that's funny.
No mercy at all, for sure. I do feel bad for this person, though, because Sagrada is a beautiful game, and it's sad that somebody just didn't quite get it. All right, moving on to our second game. Here is your first review. Too many cards, too large of a tableau, too many resources, too many actions, too long. This game is simply too much for me. It feels bloated, and playing it is exhausting. I will never ask to play this, but will occasionally play when asked.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but I do know that I want to play it.
Yeah, me too.
Based on that description, like too many cards, too many actions. Yes,
sounds
please.
Just like my kind of game.
I think I know what this is right out the gate.
Oh yeah?
Oh, really?
I do. I think I know because it made me immediately think of like my qualms with this game, even though I like this game. It's Terraforming Mars.
Man, it is in fact Terraforming Mars.
What? I got that so good. I can't believe I got to the first try.
Wow.
First try. Didn't even have to go to the second review.
I changed my answer then. I will die on that hill. I'm not a big fan of Terraforming Mars.
You're not a big fan. We have our fellow Dice Pirate Dennis is a diehard Terraforming Mars fan. In fact,
it's so good.
It really is a good game, but it is too much. I do find myself getting overwhelmed, and that's what made me click in on that, because when he said too many cards, too many resources, too much, I was like, you know what? There is a point where I look down at my tableau in Terraforming Mars, and I just go, I don't know what is going on anymore. Like, there is just a string of like green things, and I've got ants, and I've developed ants now, and I've got a meteor, and then there's like this thing is happening, and then I don't even know, and I'm moving these little cubes around. It is a lot. It's a lot to think about.
Have you played solo, Matt?
No, I've never played that one solo, and I would be fascinated to know what that was like. How do you like it solo?
It's great. You don't have. I played solo, and I played with my best friend like a few weeks back, and the experience is just totally different for sure. With solo play, you don't really play cities and stuff like that. You need to concentrate on your oxygen and your eat and stuff like that. So it's a little different. But with solo play, you don't have that many cards, to be honest. Or that many resources. So it's a little, yeah, it's interesting. The differences.
Yeah, I could see it like being a more of like a chill thing, playing it by yourself, because and having more of that feeling of just like tending to your little colony. Because like you said, you're just like, oh, I gotta make sure my heat levels are here, and I'm using this resource. And that actually could be very fun. It's like when you're kind of when you're playing competitively, and we've always played it with like 4 or more, people. So it's like there's a lot going on, and you're trying to get your engine going so you can get ahead, and somebody's like constantly maneuvering around on the board trying to getting where you want to be. So it's not the most cutthroat game in the world, but there's a lot more there are a lot more variables when you're playing, with other people. I could see it being much more chill as a solo game.
That would be something I definitely have to try. I am a little frustrated, Matt, because I had a great review that I don't get to now, but I am going to read it anyways because it's amazing. So here's the last review that you unfortunately guessed too early. This is the most overrated game I've ever played. The gaming community that pushed this to number 3 is the reason games like Monopoly dominated board games for 100 years.
Oh my
Now
gosh.
we will have another 100 years of games like Terraforming Mars, and every successive generation will wonder what the hell is wrong with us.
We lost Matt. He couldn't handle it. Look at him. We lost him.
That's hilarious. So in this reviewer's mind, in a dark dystopian future, people are just like, "Why Terraforming Mars? You ruined board gaming for a generation."
A generation of games like Terraforming Mars sounds like a great future to me.
I really don't see the Monopoly Terraforming Mars comparison. I mean,
No,
that's
not even a little
Not
bit.
at all.
That's brutal.
Have you guys backed the Ares expedition?
I think that Dennis has. So I think our group is probably going to get that eventually. I would be stunned if Dennis hadn't backed that because, like I said, he's the dedicated Terraforming Mars fan. In fact, we are planning an upcoming episode entirely on Mars stuff. I think we're going to do a head-to-head comparison of On Mars and Terraforming Mars. Pick your flavor of Mars colonization game. So that should be a fun episode.
So we're going to go ahead and go to a quick break, and we're going to talk about some amazing solo player games in just a minute.
All right, and welcome back to the Dice Pirates, and we're going to dive into our main discussion today, which is even more solo games. We did a solo game episode back a few months ago, and it was a very popular episode. And we decided it's time to revisit that topic because it is something that is really growing in popularity and interest. And to help us navigate these waters, we wanted to bring on a true expert in playing solo, and that is Lilly from @PlayItSolo on Instagram. Lilly, thank you for being with us and bringing us a little bit of expertise. And I wanted to kind of kick things off by just letting you talk a little bit about how you got into playing solo games and wanted to create your Instagram account and document that. So tell us a little bit about your background and playing it solo.
Yeah, so I've always played, board games with my family. My uncle is like a real board game geek. He always had like weird games for us to play, and we spent hours and hours with my brothers, my cousins, and my uncle play games. So I have really great memories with board games. And more recently, well, with the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, I didn't know what was gonna happen with work, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be stuck in my small apartment all day, and what am I gonna do? And well, cool, playing video games. Well, it's getting a little, well, I don't know, but I just wanted to have something to feed my brain, if that's an expression. And so I went to my LGS and I bought Mage Knight, which is going to be a cool bridge for the next segment, I think. But yeah, so I bought Mage Knight and I never really stopped, and now I have like I don't know how many games. And like I said earlier, I need to stop buying games. It's getting out of hand right now. It's crazy.
Board games are not a hobby, Lily. Board games are a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I just want to remark
For sure.
what an absolutely buck wild place to start Mage
Yeah.
Knight is. Like, of all of the options that you had
I
before
know.
you saw that, like, coffin on the shelf, and you were like, that's a good step one for me.
To be honest, it was my two final choices were Gloomhaven and Mage Knight.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And well, we used to play so many games with my uncle. I just D&D and stuff, and I feel like I needed something big to occupy my days. It's a whole day without work, and I'm working like crazy, and so I needed something to really pass the time. So yeah, so Mage Knight or Gloomhaven, and the final decision was Mage Knight.
It's interesting to hear you describe kind of your thought process of getting into games and using that phrase like feeding your brain, because that is something that I think is distinct about playing solo games compared to playing video games. It's just much more an active thing. I mean, and it's something that I didn't notice until I started getting into board gaming and then kind of going back and forth between board games and video games is video games are much more zone out and you're just kind of reacting to what you're seeing. But playing a solo board game is a very active, mentally active hobby, because not only are you playing a game, you're running a game. There's all these complex rule systems that you have to manage. That's really fascinating to me, and it makes it a very distinct kind of recreational activity.
I like the puzzle. I like the challenge, and I like to be alone with my thoughts and see, okay, I need to do that, and what can I do to be the more efficient, and how can I I like this puzzly thing with, and Mage Knight is like the big boy of puzzles, I think.
I can definitely see why you gravitated towards that one as well, though. I mean, just looking at the pictures of the game and the general aesthetic of it, it looks gorgeous. It looks amazing. And I mean, when you consider its place on, the ratings, I mean, 26 overall, 24th in terms of strategy, I mean, I can see why it's a natural place to start in many ways. Actually, I have not had the pleasure of playing this game, but I'm very excited to get to hear more about, the way this game works and some of the reasons to pick it up for sure.
I do have one more question for you before we get into it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on Mage Knight. And then we're going to start kind of breaking down some game recommendations for everybody. But the way we got to know you is through your Instagram account and Play It Solo. And I was curious about sort of the experience of like being a part of the board game Instagram community and kind of how that's contributed to your enjoyment of games. Because even though you're at home and playing games solo, it's like this whole community has kind of formed where fans of these games can interact and share. Is that sort of what made you want to kind of go into that space and create your account? I mean, what's that been like for you?
Well, it's been a little crazy because I think I started my Instagram in January, I think. So it's fairly recent, and the amount of followers that I got for the first few weeks/month was really overwhelming. I didn't know what was going on, and why would people be so interested in what I was, it was just solo reviews and solo experience, and I didn't think that it was something that people would like, and it's growing every day, and I'm talking to a lot of people who were just not really into solo gaming or just never thought of playing games solo. It has been very, very interesting to see hardcore gamer with 3 or 4 players say, oh wow, maybe that's interesting, maybe I should try to play my favorite game solo and stuff like that. It's been really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's been really fun to watch your account grow, and for us to also kind of be a part of that. It's like we're all in different places playing games, but there's this tremendous community of people sharing their experiences, and it's really fun to be a part of. But to kind of get into the games, let's get back to Mage Knight. So that's been a bucket list game for me for a while. I am on the record as a huge nerd for all things fantasy and sword and sorcery. And just the phrase Mage Knight immediately makes me want to play it. But I have been intimidated by how heavy this game's reputation for being super heavy and a little bit tough. Tell us about playing Mage Knight. What do you like about it?
Well, I'm gonna start by saying that it is a really heavy game. I spent hours and hours watching playthrough videos, and just to see how the game works, and because you have so many things to think about, right? So you start with choosing a character. You have I think 7 characters to choose from, 7 Mage Knights. And then you begin the game with a deck of 16 cards, right? So, and each deck is associated with a Mage Knight. So every mage has, different abilities, different skills, and then you start your day with this deck of cards. You are choosing a scenario. I think I have the Ultimate Edition, so I have 2 or 3 expansion with the base game, but you have 11 scenarios to choose from. I think the most popular one is the Solo Conquest. So you have 3 days and 3 nights to conquer 2 cities. So you have a limitation of time. You can't just explore for days and days. You have to stop at one point. And then so you have these little hexagonal tiles, and on each tiles you have multiple options. You can go to a village. Maybe you want recruit some units in this village, or you can go to a mage tower, and you want to decide to maybe attack this mage tower to gain a spell that you can add to your base deck. So yeah, you spend your days growing your character, level up your character, and until you think that you are ready to go and attack some cities with some really bad guys in it, and try your best.
That sounds awesome. Ian, what game am I going to compare this to right now?
You're 100% going to compare this to Runebound, and I've been waiting for it since I knew this game was coming up.
It sounds so much like Runebound, but it's like a deck building version of it. And now all the more I am dying to play it because I love a good deck builder, and to mix that in with fantasy exploration and these cool miniatures. It comes with nifty little pre-painted Mage Knights for you to play with, from what I've seen in the pictures.
They are not that great looking, to be frank. I don't really like them, but it's like I said, you don't play Mage Knight for the minis. You play for the deck building adventure, and and cast a spell and some artifacts and battle some orcs and stuff like that. It's really amazing.
This game sounds 100% up my wheelhouse.
It sounds great. It's something I really enjoy. I'm looking forward to play. And so you said you spend a lot of it, adventuring around, things like that. Do you get the feeling of really growing more powerful as you play through the game? I mean, it takes a significant amount of playing time, from what I can see. So do you really get that progression as you move forward? Does it feel satisfying towards the end?
Yeah, because let's say, for example, you decide to attack some mage tower, and you have an enemy in it. And each enemy has a little number, a fame number. So when you defeat them, you gain let's say six points of fame. And you have a little track, and every time that you level up that track, you gain a skill. And I think it's a special action card who gains you more power, right? So it really feels like you grow with your character. And it really depends on where you want to go. If you want to attack this enemy, if you want to explore some ruins, you have so many choices, because like I said, the tiles are just, I think there's maybe 20 or 25 tiles and in each one has a different option to explore. So it's the replayability is just insane. I think it's my 40th play, and just every play is different.
That's perfect. It sounds like it'd just be a good game overall, but also it sounds perfect for a solo play game that really gives you a different experience each time, but really just delivers on what it needs to provide. That's fantastic. I definitely am going to have to try this out myself.
Yeah, you create your own adventure for sure. And it's just so complex. The puzzles is just oh my god, it's so good. It's really amazing.
We're going to take a slightly different track now, and we're going to look at a game that is not quite so heavy. Aaron, what do you have for us?
I've actually got it's kind of two games in one. It's two games from the Simply Solo series published by Button Shy Games, both of which designed by Scott Alms of the Tiny Epic series oeuvre of games. It's Food Chain Island and Ugly Gryphon Inn. And they're completely different games, but they're basically you get this little wallet pack that's kind of Button Shy's whole shtick is it's a little game that you can just tuck in your pocket with 16 cards. And the one that I've been really into the most lately, Ugly Gryphon Inn, the cards are patrons at this tavern, the Ugly Gryphon Inn, and you have some of them are on the table as patrons at the bar, and then every night you have to move one of them into the inn, into this tower that you're building. And whenever you move somebody into the tower, you have to check and see if something sets them off and causes them to leave the inn, which usually has some additional catastrophic event causing somebody else to leave or just making the game worse for you in some way. And the object of it is to get a certain number of people in the inn at a certain point without I think it's 8 people. As soon as you have 8 people leave the inn, that's it, you've lost, game over. And so it really is this fantastic puzzle of okay, so if I put this guy here, he's immediately going to leave, so I can't do him. And then you look at the other guys and you're like, well, maybe I do move him because then that'll clear out this space, but then that's one fewer person that I can lose towards the whole of the game. And there's it for a game that is just 16 cards. It is such a satisfying and engaging puzzle of really trying to manage of trying to pick the lesser evil, of like, well, sometimes you have to take one of the ones that's for sure going to immediately leave so that you can do something else next turn. And Food Chain Island, very briefly, you put the 16 out in a 4x4 square. They're all different animals, and you have to move them over each other to eat each other. So it's kind of like that game at Cracker Barrel on the table with the pegs and the triangle, where the goal is to just have one person left at the end. And if you have, 3 or more, you're an ignoramus. And it's just they're both really excellent. They don't take up too much space. I can play them on my desk on my lunch break, and they're just really, really excellent little games that I've really been enjoying lately.
So I'm really fascinated by Button Shy's whole lineup of games, and I was thrilled that you wanted to talk about them, Aaron, because I just discovered these not too long ago, just on social media, seeing people posting them. And if you're not familiar with them, they're literally wallet games. That's not a euphemism. They have a tiny little plastic wallet with tiny number of cards. You could stick it in your back pocket, take it out with you. These games are perfect for now that the world is starting to tentatively open up again. I think these are tailor made for like a pub or busting out with some friends at a party or wherever you're at, or in the solo form. If you got some downtime and you've got a horizontal surface that you can play on, you could literally play these games just about anywhere. And they're probably pretty quick to play too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can my lunch is about 30 minutes and I can knock out a couple games of Ugly Gryphon Inn.
That's a really neat niche to fill, is like a game that you can just play in a couple minutes. It feels very solitaire esque, like those games you can just pull out a deck of cards. It's easy to bring around with you, but it throws a little something in that's fun. It gives you a reason to play instead of just playing the same game of solitaire over and over again, which is great. But it's nice to have that extra little theme that kind of makes it more engaging to play with.
Everybody needs some games like this in your collection. I mean, of course, we all love those all day experiences. Like Mage Knight, which I'm sure takes a couple hours or more probably to run through a scenario. I mean, that's like an afternoon, you're going to make an event of it. But, you always need something where it's just like, you know what, I'm just going to tool around with this just to keep my mind sharp, just to kill some time. So it's fun to see kind of the spectrum of games in the solo space.
Thanks to Aaron, I have Black Sonata to to play if I want to, quick little game.
So Lily, what is your next game you have for us?
So Clank in Space is for the solo play. Yeah, it's the only game requires an app to play. I don't know how people feels with, app and stuff, but...
Yeah, that's a controversial topic.
Yeah, but this one is pretty good. You have like a whole campaign for the solo play, and it really helps a lot to, manage your opponent cards and stuff, so it's pretty good. So Clank is a deck building game too. I think I have a theme. I like deck building games for sure. So yeah, so you basically you are a thief, and you need to steal something from Lord Eradicus on his spaceship.
I'm already on board for this.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So along the way you will need to recruit allies, and you of course gonna gain some cards that you're gonna buy with other cards to build a good deck engine. But you need to be very silent, because Clank is for the noise that you are making on the spaceship, and the more noise you make, the more the Lord Eradicus will be very angry with you if you don't play like the right way. So yeah, it's a fun little game. The campaign is pretty well done. I think it's 5 scenarios that I've finished, I think, in 2 weekends. It's a little short, to be honest with you. I would love to play a more official version, but the BGG community is pretty good for that. So someone did make like 5 more scenarios for solo players to play, and with an official website and stuff, and it looks amazing. So I'm gonna try this weekend to play and see if it's any good.
It never ceases to amaze me, like the creativity and talent in the BGG community. Like a publisher will make a game, and in like 2 weekends, somebody's been like, I made like 3 extra campaigns. It's not a big deal. It's just like, wow, that's incredible. This game sounds really fun. And this is a case where I feel like the app makes a lot of sense to me, because I know that's sort of controversial right now. Do we want apps? Do we want video games intruding in our precious tabletop space? I have complicated feelings about apps and board games, but it just occurred to me as you were talking that solo gaming might be a space where it can help, because it does take some of the game management off of you, and you can kind of play the game a little bit more. Did you feel like it was helpful in that way?
Oh yeah, and especially for Clank in Space, it's so in theme too. It's you have an app, and you're in space, and you're a thief, and you're a hacker, and it's just it fits perfectly, really. And I know it's not the case for a lot of games, and I agree. I don't really like to play with apps too, but for Clank, it's just it fits great, and it tells you you need to remove this card and this card from the adventure row, and from time to time you just add a new mission, and oh, you're here, oh yeah, don't forget, maybe you can do that, and it just adds an extra feeling to, yeah, you're on a mission, and sometimes you're gonna have a little and yes, don't forget to do that, and blah blah blah, and it's just
awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing for Clank in Space specifically. It's amazing. It feels so good. And the automa is not that complicated in Clank, so it's you can just have a dice and roll it and see, oh, 2, okay, so I'm gonna remove the second card and stuff like that. But for the ensemble, just adding extra missions and stuff like that, it's just so cool, so cool.
That sounds fantastic. I am curious because as I look at the game, it says that it's for 2 to 4 people. Is this a situation where you do have to purchase the single player expansion, or does that come? Is that available if you just download the app? How does that work?
Yeah, the app is free, so you can have it on Android or Apple. And yeah, it's just basically a whole campaign for solo players or for multiplayer too.
Yeah, that's a great tie into our soapbox discussion. Like, good on them for adding that free as an added value. They could just as easily have charged probably $5 for that, and I probably would have paid it. But you know, how nice is it to just be an added value and something that makes you, if you're a solo player, go out and get Clank space. That's awesome.
That's fantastic, and it sounds like it makes the game way more atmospheric as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think it's the case for a lot of games where you have a campaign, right? It feels like a big adventure, really, and not just like, oh yeah, we're gonna play this thing or whatever. It's a whole thing, It's 5 or 6 missions and you're on it. I played like back to back, and it was so cool. And it's an hour and a half maybe of playtime, so it's not that heavy, really.
That sounds like something I definitely enjoy, and being able to play with more people as well sounds like it would scale up pretty well. So that's definitely one I have to add to my list. That sounds awesome. All right, so Matt, what do you have for us? I know you have a game that you've played, and I actually got the chance to play as well, and you're very excited about.
Oh man, I'm thrilled to talk about this game. It is Escape the Dark Castle from the publisher Themeborn. I have been in love with this game since I bought it a couple of weeks ago, and it's been on my wish list for a while because it immediately grabbed my attention with its dark gothic art and theme, and just the thought of a really well-crafted, story-driven, essentially dungeon crawler, which is what it is. In Escape the Dark Castle, you play prisoners in the titular Dark Castle who are trying to escape. And the format of the game is like working your way through the pages of an old choose-your-own-adventure style book. You construct your deck out of a selection of chapter cards. You deal out 15 at random. And then you place a boss at the back of the deck, and you put on your book cover, which is a cool picture of the Dark Castle. And then to play, you just literally flip open these big oversized cards like pages of a novel, and you read the scene, and there's a wonderful black and white creepy illustration that tells you where you're at, and then you roll your dice to try to resolve whatever encounter and proceed on to the dungeon. You play just common medieval folk in this game. There's no paladins or rangers or druids. You just play the miller, the tanner, or the abbot. Just sad medieval folk who've been captured. And each character is represented by a really nice oversized character die. And on each side of it are symbols corresponding to the game's stats: wisdom, cunning, or might. And each character has a unique assortment of those key stats. And so every play is a little bit different depending on who you're playing. You are more or less likely to roll certain stats, which means you're more or less apt to be able to pull off whatever challenge that the game is putting in front of you. It is remarkably thematic and fun, but I will say up front that it is maybe not for everybody. I can sort of get that this game, some people might bounce hard off of it because it's very linear. It doesn't present a lot. There are some interesting choices, but not really deep ones. Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower had a hilariously negative review of this. If you look this up on YouTube and watch the Dice Tower review of this, he hated this game. And his criticism of it was essentially, it's like you flip over a card, roll some dice. Flip over a card, roll some dice. And it's like, he's not wrong, really. It's a fair criticism. And if you're not of the mindset to kind of embrace the thematic part of this, mechanically, there isn't a lot going on. So I think that's a fair point to make up front. If, however, you're willing to kind of lower the lights, and if you're the type of person who's willing to actually read the flavor text, and if you want to get like pulled into the story that the game presents, it's really good. It's better than the sum of its parts, mostly because of the quality of the components and the presentation. You can't really oversell how great this thing is to look and play with. The cards are wonderful texture. The chapter cards are oversized and great to look at. And the art is amazing. It's this black and white pen and ink style that is somewhere between like an old D&D manual from the 70s meets Edward Gorey. You know, it's got this strange, creepy quality. I love the character portraits with like the big sad eyes on the people. It pulls you in. Pretty well written. It's not like Shakespeare or anything, but like the prose and the pulpy verbiage on the cards really kind of sells the atmosphere. And even though it's not the most deep game in the world in terms of strategic choices, there's a tremendous amount of tension, right? It does give you some interesting options. Some of the cards do pull you into an unavoidable encounter. You have to fight something, or you fall right into a trap. But some of them give you these tantalizing push your luck choices, like you can sneak past this person, or you could go in and try to steal a couple of useful items if you're able to roll cunning in one attempt. And so suddenly that becomes a really interesting choice of like, I don't know, do I want to try to steal it? Do I want to slip by? It's really good. And then there's the item play, which is probably the most interesting part of it. All throughout the adventure, you're going to acquire all sorts of useful items, potions, weapons, an old rotten apple, useful stuff. And you can only hold 2 items per character. And one of the things I was surprised about when I played it is it's actually very generous with items. You pick them up pretty regularly as you're moving through. And so then you're forced with like, what do you leave behind? So your inventory management becomes this interesting puzzle of like, this potion's really powerful but situational. This weapon's really good, but it only helps me certain times. And so you're constantly shuffling your inventory and then immediately regretting it when you're like, oh, could have used that. So all in all, I have loved this game. I highly recommend it if you like thematic stuff, if you like story-driven stuff, if you like games with cool art styles. It scales wonderfully to single player. It's at its most difficult in a single player. You play with 2 characters when you're playing it solo, or if you're playing it with 2 players. So it's identical at 2 players. It's at its most challenging, and it's probably pitched perfectly at that number of players because you have fewer options, because between the 2 characters you only got 4 items to deal with, to mitigate damage or deal with stuff. You have a smaller health pool between the characters, and if a single character dies, the game's over. So it's really tense, really tough. It's easy to set up and play, and it doesn't have any of that brain burn that can come from a solo game because there's so little rules. There's no like game management or rule structure you have to keep in your head. I mean, literally, read the card, figure out what happened, read the next card. Really, really great. I will say though, even though we're talking about a solo episode, my very favorite game of it was Ian and I played with my wife Christine, and we made it down to the final encounter with the boss, and it came down to a single die roll, win or lose. If we didn't kill this boss on this one die roll, he was going to hit back and we were just going to die, and that was it. And Christine rolled the die. She was the last one to go. She rolled, didn't get the hit, and we were like, oh, and then just simultaneously all of our eyes were like, the potion! You have a luck potion! And so we like drank the luck potion, re-rolled the die. It came up with what we needed to hit the boss and kill him. There were high fives going around the table. It was insane. And I was like, oh, the magic of board games. That was one of my favorite things that's happened. Yeah, so it was incredible. I hope I'm not overselling this game. It really is. I think it does kind of require that right person to appreciate it. But gosh, if you like story-driven stuff, if you like creepy stuff, this one, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of explaining, the best parts about the game. I think that the simplicity, the simplicity of it could work against if you are looking for something more, but the simpleness of it does make it very appealing, I think, in many ways. Like, you don't have to worry about adding stats. All you do is roll a die and you know exactly what's going to happen. It's very easy. It's simple to get into. It can be very thematic if you really put the time in, and it's incredibly well balanced. But I think one of the things that I like about it too is if you want to make it a little bit easier, if you really just want to do a little better, just give yourself a little bit more health at the beginning of the game. That's the only difficulty really rating of the game, is how much health you start with. So you can easily give yourself a little more health. Just start the game off, make sure you go a little bit further. It doesn't matter. Like that, there's so little to the game that you can change that one thing. I would definitely recommend it as a game if you're interested at all in a very kind of like thematic experience, if you can get into that at all.
Yeah, I was looking at it while you were talking about it, and like that artwork is beyond gorgeous. It is not an art style that you see in this hobby. Like just the stark black and white pen and ink drawing of it all is certainly eye-catching, if nothing else. Also, I do see big fistfuls of dice, and I mean,
yeah, and they're wonderfully made dice. They're big, oversized, like chunky dice that are just fun to roll. And, I was saying earlier in the episode that how much I love dice rolling, and this game kind of epitomizes that. I mean, I know some people have like a love-hate relationship with dice and the randomness, but that tension of just like, I need to get this certain roll. Am I going to get it? And you let the dice go. Oh, so good. The final thing, the final couple thoughts I'll say on this game are just to kind of epitomize Themeborn's commitment to like design. You get a oversized like character sheet when you play the game that really serves no purpose. Like all the information on the character sheet is actually on your die. The little stats you see carved onto the wall as if your person carved it into their prison cell wall. All those are just telling you like what's on the faces of the die. So you could just hand somebody their character die and say, "This is you. You're the Tanner." But that doesn't come alive. Having this little character portrait to look at and you see your sad little prisoner's gaunt face. Now it's a story. Now, who's this person? Why are they in jail? If you're the type of person that starts filling in the story gaps in your mind of like who your character is, just that sense of like when they were designing the game of like we got to make sure they see their character's face to like make it real. So smart. They're so thoughtful in their design sense. And then the last thing I will say is they are, speaking of apps, the game alludes to there being an app that's going to support this. When you buy it, a little leaflet is right there on top saying that they've got an app coming. It says app coming in 2020. It did not come out in 2020. So I don't know, Themeborn, if you're listening, where's this app? I'm actually kind of fascinated because to Lily, to your point about the Clank experience, I think it does add atmospheric effects and keeps track of your health and the little like housekeeping things. I think this is a case where, I mean, it's not like there's a lot of housekeeping in this game, but I think an app would be a fun little addition to just add some flavor, and I'm looking forward to when it actually drops. But it's not out yet, so we'll see. That's Escape the Dark Castle from Themeborn.
Have you played with any of the expansions?
Not yet, but I've already got them in my like Amazon queue, and they're coming. Have you played this one, Lily?
No, it's out of stock everywhere here, and it has been for like a year, and it's insane. I don't want to buy it from, it's just I really want to try to buy from my local game store.
That's a really great point.
I bought Black Sonata from TGG in the United States, and I was like, oh, but I did not have a choice for this game. But
yeah, that's a really great point. I mean, Amazon is that's actually it'd be a fascinating topic for an episode. Is like, is Amazon good or bad for games? Because on the one hand, I mean, you're not supporting your local game stores and the value that they provide to communities. But on the other hand, hard to get game, especially if you live in like a rural area and you don't have a store, like a hard to get game like Escape the Dark Castle. I did get it off Amazon, and it was out of print for a long time. I had it in my watch list, and about a week and a half ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, it popped up that they had like 4 or 5 in stock, and I went for it. So I don't regret it entirely. I think it's one of those cases where this is a difficult enough to get game that I don't feel too bad buying it. But I was, since then, I've been on Themeborn's website and seeing that you can order products straight from them, and was thinking that would probably be the better place to pick up the various expansions. But they look cool. There's 3 expansions that add more scenario cards, but more bosses. I actually think I'm almost more excited about the bosses than anything else, because the great little final mechanic that I like is that the final card, it looks like a door on the back of it. So when you get to the end of your journey, there's this wooden door that you turn over, and it's a surprise what boss it is, because you can you shuffle the bosses, so you don't know what you're going to see. And I like the idea of having more variety and maybe running into a boss you haven't seen yet or haven't seen in a while. Definitely going to pick up some of the expansions for sure.
It sounds amazing.
If you are interested in these games at all, I would highly encourage you to check out Themeborn's YouTube channel. They do have a companion game, Escape the Dark Sector. It's basically the sci-fi version of this. And for both of these games, they have a live-action trailer that they've put out. It's absolutely amazing, cheesy sci-fi in the case of Escape the Dark Sector. Very just, like thematic. It's super cheesy. It's super fun. Really gives you a feel for the game. I would check those out. So, Aaron, let's get one more game from you. What do you have for us?
Yeah, the bigger, more board gamey game that I have is Raiders of the North Sea from Garphill Games. It's a worker placement game about Vikings. The board is basically divided into 2 halves. On the bottom half, you've got kind of the town where you're going around, you're gathering resources, be it money or cards or recruiting Vikings to your longship, other things to just get the resources that you need to go out. And then on the top half of the board, you actually send your Vikings to go raid different locations. And as you do that, you gain additional resources, and you get that's mostly where your points come from in the game is by raiding these different locations. It has a very unique mechanic in that it is a worker placement game, but you don't have any workers that belong to you. So at the start of the game, there's a couple locations on the board that are pre-seeded with workers, and then everybody gets one of the same black level 1 worker. And on your turn, you take your worker, you put it on an empty space, do that action. Then you take any other space except for the one you just put on, and you take the worker that's on that space, and then you do that action. So your strategy behind, like, okay, well, I know Matt is about to go raid, but I also know that he wants to hire another guy to make sure he's got enough strength to get the most points. So I'm going to go there and kind of block that spot off, and now he can't do it in the order that he wanted to do, because that becomes really important. Is you can almost always do the two things in the town that you wanted to do. It's just, can you do them in the order you need to do them? Can you go get money first and then go recruit the guy? But oh no, you're on the money space, so I can't do that first. I have to go to an empty space, and now I'm totally boned because I don't have enough money and I don't know what to do. And then when you send your Vikings out on a raid, you put it in one of the up top spots, and then you get usually a higher level worker from that space, which presents its own interesting choices, because the higher level workers in some of the spots in the town, you get better, or you get better rewards. Like when you go to the place where you get money, instead of giving 2 money, you can get like 3 money or a gold. But there are some locations that you can't go to with a level 2 or a level 3 worker. It has to be the basic guy. And then there's some that you can only go to with the level 2 or level 3. So it's really interesting. What I really love about playing it solo is it completely changes the tempo of the game for me. I play the group that I play the most with are very Euro heavy, thoughtful. They plan out 15 turns ahead. So when I'm playing with them, we generally spend like so much more time in the village building up as much as possible until the first person goes out and raids, and then now it's a race to see who can get there next. Whereas playing solo, the solo is much, much more aggressive, and it forces me to play the game differently because I'm having to play it a lot more quickly and aggressively, and not make sure that I have everything that I need, and just, okay, what can I get away with? What do I not need to make sure I'm as super massive overpowered as possible? What can I squeak by? Because it doesn't stop or slow down. It is constantly, every turn that it can, it's going to go raid. And that's just, that's a wildly different way than how I play the game, and it's really interesting to me how it almost feels like two different games when I'm playing it by myself versus with my play group. And like I was saying earlier, you do have to buy the solo variant from the publisher, and it actually looks like they don't sell the physical version anymore. You can now buy it as an app. It is not free. I mean, it's only $1.50, but still, there is that border there where you do have to pay in order to play it by yourself, which is a little bit busted. But it's such a fantastically fun game, even solo.
How much is the app, Aaron?
It is $149 American.
Well, it's not too pricey, but still, that's that point we brought up of like they saw the market and we're like, let's put this behind a paywall. It should be in the base game. If you can play it with 2 in the box, you should be able to play it with 1 in the box. Lily, I think you've brought a new cause to life to my.
Oh my god! But it's
free the solo mode.
Exactly, but it's so frustrating. Really, it's just, come on, you can do a solo variant. So why? I mean, I'm just. moving on.
That sounds so fun, though. I mean, any game involving Vikings is just, I love that. I love Vikings. Everybody, that's cool. It's so cool. And then, getting to move out. The idea of a worker placement game where you don't actually own any of your workers. It's about just shuffling people around, trying to move people into places that, they can't be as advantageous. That's such a different take on the worker placement genre. And that's the sort of thing I love in these worker placement games, is taking it and like slightly adjusting it and making it just ever so slightly different, so you kind of approach it in a different way. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, the first time I played it and somebody was explaining to me the game, and they were like, I was like, oh, hey, we all have the same color pieces, and I was like rifling through the box, and he was like, no. They're Vikings, they don't belong to you, they don't work for you. You're conscripting them temporarily, and that just blew my mind. I was like, that's amazing.
Man, they even found a way to tie it in thematically. That's perfect. I love that so much. How long does this normally take to play for you?
Playing solo, I mean, I've played it a number of times now, and I've got the setup and teardown pretty tight. I can get through a solo in under an hour.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And then even with 2 or 3 people, if not including the teach, it's under 2 hours.
That's pretty good. That's not too bad for, a decent, weight game, something that, does have a bit of heft to it. So, no, that's good. It's nice to have a game that, you can spend some time with. It doesn't take up, all of your time in the evening. So we're going to go ahead and move on to, sadly, our final game of this episode. Lily, what do you have for us?
Well, speaking of, shared workers and worker placement game, I want to talk about Expedition to Newdale. I think it's the latest Alexander Pfister. I have another game from him, Cloud Edge, which is on my shelf of shame. Unfortunately, I bought it, and I don't know why I'm not that interested now. But anyway, so Expedition to Newdale, I really really loved. It's a game that unfolds on 8 chapters. So again, there is a campaign element that I really really like. So it's also an engine building game, worker placement game, like I said. So you start with a building, a coal mine, with some resources on it, and each resources is like money. So you can buy another card, another building, and you place them on your little player board, and you have some action to choose from, and you have a goal for sure. I think the first scenario is like to have 38 victory point, a certain amount of resources, and they are pretty high. So you need to think about your engine. You need to think about, okay, what do I need to build in order to gain the most resources to buy another building, so I can start to have a lot of victory points and stuff like that. And to do that, you have workers at your disposition. Workers or assistants, I think they are called in the game. So each round you'll draw an event card. So you have a time lapse for the game too. And so on each event card, you have a certain amount of workers. On each round, you also have a bag full of them, and you pick 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the event cards, and you add it to your market. I think that's what it's called. And with those assistants / workers, you go on your buildings and grab some more resources, some more money, and you play like that. And it's a fun in the game. And also, what is really 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 cool with Expedition to Newdale is so each building can generate resources, and you can chaining other goods or cards with those buildings. And I think that's where it's the most interesting, and where the puzzle is just so so good and great, it's because the chaining element is just so interesting. And I haven't played a game with this mechanic. Expedition to Newdale is like a sequel to All My Goods, and I haven't played any of them, so it was just like a really nice surprise to have this mechanics. Yeah.
It sounds really, really intriguing how these mechanics work. And looking at the game, it has it's really attractive looking art style. Does it have a storytelling component to it as well? It says like
Not
chapters.
really.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not even well. It's chapters like scenarios, but it lacks a little bit of narrative. To be honest with you, but yeah, the art it's like a old Euro games, right? It's just it has this like German or feels. It just
Yeah.
but I like it. I think it looks gorgeous.
I've somehow gotten fond of this look in games as games have gotten a lot more elaborate and sophisticated in their art. There's something about these like quaint Euro folk in their little village and that kind of throwback art style that's very very retro and pleasing. So that's really cool. That almost sounds really fun, and it's nice to have some options in that kind of Euro space that are fun solo as well.
Yeah.
It looks very reminiscent of like Agricola and Clans of Caledonia in terms of the design, but also the engine building mechanic, which I personally love engine builders. And you said like I love that they do have like that campaign story to it. You said it's not so much of the story, but is it sort of like explain the mechanics as you move forward? How does that build into it?
Yeah, it's you have like a big picture of the story. You start at one point, and then I think it's the emperor or the king or the queen mandates you to do some missions and stuff, and you have like a story like that. But it's you don't play for the story for sure. It's not that kind of game. No, that's unfortunately. But it works pretty good. You just have your end goal card, and just it's just you need to do that, and it's just yeah. But I really like narrative games, and but for this one it didn't really bother me.
That's the strength of a good Euro for sure. I mean, many of the best Euros have absolutely no story to them whatsoever, but being able to have just completely robust mechanics that carry the game for you is one of the best things I think you can have in a game for sure. All right, so those are some great solo games that you should absolutely try out. We are so thankful to have Lilly from Play It Solo here. Definitely gave us a new perspective, brought some new games that I would love to try out. Lilly, if people want to follow you or reach out to you, where can they find you? And any final thoughts?
Well, first of all, it was really amazing. I was a little nervous, but I hope it went well. But it was awesome to talk to you guys. And yeah, people can find me on Instagram at Play It Solo.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's fantastic to have you here. Hopefully we can have you on again. There are plenty of games that we were unable to get to, unfortunately, but solo gaming is one of the best parts of this hobby. I'm really coming to believe that. Matt, if people want to get in touch with us as well, where can they do that?
You can find us on Instagram at Dice Pirates. Give us a follow. We do more than podcasts. We write reviews. We give updates on what we're playing, what we're doing. We talk about mini painting. I misspell words with alarming frequency on the Instagram story, so that's always fun to look for. So yeah, check us out on Instagram at Dice Pirates, and again, check out Lilly on at Play It Solo, and we would love to hear from you all.
We really hope that you do reach out and contact us. We love to get to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this podcast, definitely consider giving us a review. Leave us a like over on Apple, wherever you do consume your podcast. It may not really matter to you. It may not matter to us, but unfortunately, it does matter to Apple and the algorithms that are in place. So if you have the time, if you're willing to, leave us a review over there. We thank you so much for listening to us. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you join us next time here on the Dice Pirates.